Lots going on in the world today. And of course, know that there are a number of conflicts. And actually, tomorrow on the World Edition, we'll be having a guest that'll be working with one of those relief organizations that is actually working in Ukraine, Israel, and definitely other parts of Eastern Europe as well. So, looking forward to hearing from Don Parsons, who will be on the show tomorrow morning and all in that kind of way. So, it should be quite an interesting conversation. And we'll see what they're doing in relief in a variety of places. And speaking of relief, it looks like the Emirate president has rebuffed a request by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to pay unemployment stipends to Palestinian workers from the occupied West Bank, whom Israel barred from entering its territory after the October 7th Hamas attack. And a Israeli official said that, and a source familiar with the issue actually told several media sources about that. So apparently, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zaid said, ask Zelensky for the money, and that is what he sarcastically told Netanyahu. So apparently, the refusal by this sheikh underscores the position of so many Arab countries that have said that they won't foot the bill to maintain the status quo in the West Bank and Gaza after the war. One Emirate official said the notion that Arab countries will come in to rebuild and pay the bill for what's currently happening is wishful thinking. And shortly after the Hamas attack, the Israeli government imposed a closure on the occupied West Bank for what it said were security reasons. That meant that the more than 100,000 Palestinians who lived in the West Bank but worked in Israel before the war could not enter Israeli territory. And the worsening Palestinian economy and growing unemployment due to the war have heightened concerns among the Israeli security establishment and the Biden administration that such conditions could lead to a violent escalation in the West Bank. And the Israeli Economic Cabinet, led by Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich, rejected a proposal by the Israeli Defense Ministry to allow some Palestinian workers into Israel. And despite pressure from the Israeli Defense Forces and the Shin Bet security agency, Netanyahu chose not to put the issue to a vote in the security cabinet after Smotrich and some of the others that are considered more on the right wing side of politics threatened to resign. So that is something that we're seeing in the news in terms of world politics. And of course, we'll get to some United States politics as well, because there's this whole case around immunity and all along those lines. So it'll be interesting to see what folks have to say about this and who will have to foot the bill should we ever get an end to the conflict. Because apparently there are some folks that want the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and other Arab countries to be in charge of rebuilding Gaza after the war. And that is according to both Israel and U.S. officials. But the UAE publicly said it won't pay for the rebuilding of Gaza unless it is part of an agreement that includes renewing the U.S.-led peace process with a path toward what some people consider to be the two-state solution and all along those lines. So it'll be interesting to see what folks' reactions are to this. We've got Jatovi with us. I've got Sasha, and I know Sasha's been following this story. And even Kim has asked sometimes, and she's one of the founders of the network, about the idea of what would happen should we actually get to an end in this war and all along those lines. So that's just an interesting article that I found that I thought we'd start off with, and maybe we'll get to the immunity case with what's going on in Trump and everything. But what are folks' thoughts? Because apparently there was a notion that was put out there by the Israelis to get the some of the folks from the Arab countries to pay for the rebuild when it took place. And I'm guessing that that sarcastic remark was based on the money that Zelensky has gotten to maintain the Ukraine side of the Ukraine-Russian war and all along those lines. But any thoughts around what I put out there and everything? And that was a news article that I found before we started this show and everything. But should there be people in both sides of the Middle East that need to be helping with the rebuilding should this war come to a conclusion, hopefully sometime in the early part of this year?
You can start to rebuild something when destruction is finished, and it's not the case with Palestine, Gaza. The destruction is still going on, and nobody knows when it will be finished. And it's foolish to spend money to rebuild something which will be destroyed over and over and again and again. You have to stop destruction. That's number one. Number two, you discuss how to rebuild.
Yeah, that makes sense. Any thoughts around that, Jatovi or Kim and everything? Because, like I said, it was put out there, and I guess that it was actually put out, I guess, by the Israeli government and all in that way. But definitely, it sounds like the UAE and some other Arab nations are going like they wanted to have some conditions within the rebuild as well.
So, we can look at history and all the times that maybe we have gone in and, participated in rebuilding whatever was destroyed, including things that we destroyed. My mother always had a rule: you broke it, you fix it. You destroyed it, you rebuild it. And it's always worked in my family. I think we need to start following that rule in some cases. But I think that the UN needs to come in, and if we're going to be United Nations, but if we're United Nations like we're the United States, screw it. It ain't going to work. Everybody does their own thing. But if we're going to be United Nations, if we're going to unite and rebuild something, then I think it needs to be a neutral alliance organization that comes in, or people who are designated, and those people are very neutral, and it's rebuilt with them. If we're going to be using our funds and then maybe some other country funds and we rebuild it, I think it can be done, but I think it needs to be united, and I think it needs to be controlled so that things like this do not happen again. And I think that people need, if they want money from other people and you want them to rebuild your house, then we need to be able to use it. But I think it needs to be a neutralized organization of people to control the whole rebuild.
I think there is a very important point that I'd like to make. If you remember the major rebuilding of Germany and Japan, who were devastated completely and ruined in the Second World War, the reconstruction process was very successful. And the only one reason is the most important one, is that neither German nor Japanese were threatening to destroy United States or other European countries like Great Britain or France or Russia or anybody else who were victorious in Second World War. So there was a complete agreement. Okay, here's what's happened: a Nuremberg trial, a rebuilding process. Everything is in place. All dots were completed. Now here you want to rebuild something for Palestinians. Whom else? Of course, Palestinians. Nobody is going to live there except Palestinians. Now, if they are still threatening a destruction of Israel, and that concept from the river to the sea, where there is no place for Israel to exist, what kind of rebuilding is there?
Well, and again, you're not going to rebuild until the war ends and there's negotiations, just like when we went in to rebuild. So when the war is over, when things are done, and you bring a calm into the storm, of course, that calm is an eye, and there will always be probably a little storm that follows, because when you rebuild something, it's not easy, and you're going to be revisiting a lot of feelings and things that have happened, and you're going to have some resistance, always some resistance. So you're going to have to be very careful, and that's why it should be somebody who is very neutral, an organization of maybe different governors from different countries, that come in and build it together so that Palestine doesn't feel threatened. One, that's the number one thing you have to do. If you want to stop all of this nonsense, you have to end people's fears, okay? If you want to stop them from resisting and stop them from fighting and attacking, you have to end their fear. You have
What about Israelis' people's fears? They are also fearful simply because neither Hamas nor Palestinians, or both of them, declared that they would agree to write to Israel to exist, number one. Number two, to defend its population. Neither of them agreed, or both of them. And where you go from there?
Well,
How
then
you
if,
talk about
well, I
peace?
mean, we don't know that yet. The war's not over yet.
And we
And
don't
when
know what. So hold on a
we
second,
don't
Kim.
know what people's idealisms are going to be. And heck, there might not even be a Gaza left the way you talk, Sasha. So,
Could be.
I mean, you know, I'm just saying, let's take a look at some of that fact. But what I'm saying is if you want to rebuild something and you don't want resistance of any kind, the first thing you do is you have to set the calm in. And the way to do that is to end the fears. And I think the best way to do that is to bring in non-affiliated people with any of the war to rebuild, and people who are about, you know, let's end the fear between both. And maybe you got to do, maybe, you know what, maybe we're going to have to send counselors in between the both countries and set people down between the both countries with a counselor. Yes, Jatovi.
So, Kim, what you're saying is right. We have to end the cycle of everybody trying to kill everybody. And that's what's going on at this moment. One thing that, yes, Sasha, there is an issue where, you know, Hamas is a problem for the Israeli people, but we agree the Israeli people deserve they deserve the right to defend themselves. They have a right to life and so on and so forth. But the same thing goes for the Palestinian people and the people of Gaza. The problem comes into play when, for example, when people start equating the Palestinian people, even as Hamas, saying, okay, the Palestinian people are Hamas. That's not true. So therefore, then that puts the Palestinian people's lives in danger. So the same thing where you're complaining about where, well, the Israeli people need to feel like they are not under attack or being going to be attacked. Well, the Palestinian people need to feel that as well. So in a rebuild process, what Kim is saying is spot on, is that we need to extend a hand instead of always extending that fist. Always extending that fist means somebody's going to be swinging right back at you, and they're trying to protect themselves in the same light. So a way to rebuild that whole situation, and honestly, the war needs to come to an end. Yeah. It has to, because again, Hamas has an ideology, and you can't go to war with an ideology. The only thing you're going to do when you go to war with an ideology is create other individuals that become sympathetic to that ideology, no matter how horrible that ideology is. So
not necessarily so. Let me address that. So if you remember, both Germany and Japan, they had ideology. They did have.
So, no.
And yet they had to be defeated.
Just to point out, Sasha, what you just stated there was wrong.
Capitulation, and then you can start rebuilding, and you can start
what you stated there, trying to equate Japan or the Japanese people with Hamas and an ideology is wrong. Same thing with you're trying to equate Germany and the whole country and the people with the idea of Hamas or the Nazis themselves is wrong. So what ends up happening is what we should do is try and help rebuild Gaza, because this issue wasn't just because Hamas took off and Hamas was going after them. Remember, the people of Palestine were already upset, not only at Hamas, but also the people of Israel, because of the occupation that was going on. So they were upset at that situation too. It's a very complex situation.
You're talking 100% nonsense.
No,
Palestinian people participated in atrocities of October 7th. They crossed the border to Israel.
Hamas.
They were grabbing the hostages and Hamas as well, but
the atrocities on October 7th.
Not only
Hamas is raping people
order
and
was
using that as a issue of war.
Was breached in 90 different places.
Here,
It's not
Sasha,
just
Sasha,
Hamas.
here's
But
here's
why
a,
do
here's
we
a
No,
better,
blame-
no, listen, I will not yield to that important point.
here's a better analogy for you,
This
Sasha.
nonsense, please.
Sasha,
I
here's
will
a better
tell you
analogy
what's
for
the
you.
reality happening. There
Sasha,
are
here is
already
a better
films
analogous
that are being
reality
shown all
for
over
you.
the world. So you
Here
want
is
to
a
talk
better,
over me? Okay.
Sasha,
Okay.
here is a better analogous reality for you. The U.S. went
I don't
into
know who
where
listens to you, but if
you don't want to
somebody
listen
listens
because
to
you don't
you,
want to
good
understand.
luck.
You've already dug in your feet, so
Enjoy
therefore
yourself.
you're already saying that
Enjoy
you
yourself.
don't
Okay?
want peace. That's what it
It's
is. You
not
don't
a
want peace. You want
peace.
somebody to
It's a
dominate you.
country or Hamas or Gaza who
Well, again,
violated
Sasha,
on October 7th
Sasha, as I
Israel
stated,
killed
as I stated,
1,500 people or so.
Sasha,
There has to
as
be
I stated,
punishment. There has to be
as I
complete
stated,
capitulation
Sasha,
and then rebuilding. There will be no rebuilding without complete capitulation.
Sasha,
Period.
you're
No,
calling for the genocide of
to be
people.
complete
Therefore,
capitulation,
listen,
recognition of
Sasha,
Israel
again,
rights to exist.
again, let
Without
me
that,
help
there will be
you.
no rebuilding
Let
of
me
any
help
kind.
you, please, Sasha,
Everything
because
will be
you are calling
destroyed.
for
You'll
the,
see.
you are literally calling for the mass
You'll
genocide
see.
of
No,
a
no, I'm
people.
not calling for
Let,
any.
yes, you
Who
are.
am I
So let me
for
help
anybody
you,
to
please.
listen to me?
Let me
There is
help you, please.
Israel and its
Let me help you.
leadership. Talk to
So
them.
as
They're in
the
charge, not
here
me.
is an analogous situation. As the U.S. went to war with quote unquote ISIS, they wanted to destroy all of ISIS. ISIS was an ideology. ISIS is still around.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can't say that the world or World War II was going after the world against the Nazis. The Nazis and neo-Nazis are still around. That's an ideology. So if you're going to war against an ideology, you're not going to win that war
So
because
what
you
you have
cannot
to
you cannot destroy
listen.
an
Okay,
ideology.
okay,
All you're
you
doing
want
is creating
your
sympathizers
ideology
for that.
you want. It's
So
okay.
what you
Don't
want
ask
to
anything
do,
what you want.
what
I
you
don't know,
want
maybe
to do,
viable
if
approach.
Sasha, if you are asking for peace and you are wanting and you say that the people of Palestine deserve the right to live just as much as the people of Israel deserve
Not
the right
sure
to
about
live.
that. They had the right to leave before October 7th.
So
After
you
October
again,
7th, I'm not sure.
listen to what you're saying,
It's
Sasha.
up to Israeli leadership.
Listen to
Whether
what
they
you're
have
saying.
right to exist, I'm not sure about that.
You're saying that you're calling again for the mass genocide of people because
No,
you
I'm
just
not
literally
calling
said
for anything.
you literally said they do not
Seeing
have the right to
facts.
live.
I'm seeing facts.
That is what you
What's
just
happened
stated.
on October 7th? What's happened
Do
after
the
that?
Palestinian people
There
have the
is
right to
no,
live? Sasha?
there is no
Sasha,
capitulation
simple
of
yes
Hamas
or no question.
leadership. There is
It's
no
simple yes or no question.
capitulation of Hamas leadership. There are
Do
the same threats to
Sasha,
Israel like before.
Sasha,
So therefore,
Sasha,
Israel has to take care of this.
do the Palestinian people have a right to live?
Okay, ask your question somebody else. I don't care.
Do the
Hold on a
Palestinian
second.
I
Hold on a
don't
people
care
second.
enough to
Just
answer your
with Shelby and
question.
Sasha.
No,
Shelby and
you
Sasha.
you put down people who want to commit genocide against Israel and Jews, and I do too. I want to put down anyone who wants to commit genocide against anyone, because until we end this attitude that only your society is better or good, or you have committed revenge against whoever, we will never ever gain consciousness to get anywhere in peace in this world. You have to set that aside. We have to stop saying that you kill all Palestinians because of October 7th. Not all Palestinians decided that. Okay, Hamas may have led it, maybe a few Palestinians backed it, but if you're being held hostage by a militant group, there's not much you're going to do. You're going to do whatever you can to protect your family and keep them alive. Now, Palestinians have been held hostage for many years by different organizations, and Hamas has taken them over. They are the weak people of the world. They are the most weakest. Maybe it's because they're most peaceful. Maybe they're the most godlike people of the world because they're just so peaceful, and other countries come in and tell them what to do, push them around, make them slaves. Hamas comes in, tells them what to do, and Hamas probably says, you know what, we can protect you. So you hire your bodyguards. I don't know, but you're not going to end this if you're going to constantly want to uprise and commit genocide, just like, Scotland and Ireland, and just like other countries that have been at war. When somebody came to me on October 7th and said, "Oh my God, you won't believe what happened," in my brain, you know what I said? You know what? Big deal. This happens all the time between the two countries. They've been fighting for years. Not that big deal, but I'm just saying they've been at this for years. So let it get settled. Let it get settled, but don't kill everyone. Don't commit genocide. Become a humanitarian, and then let a neutral organization come in.
There is no such organization in the world
Well,
existing.
even
Kill the
And
one.
even more
There's
so.
one question to what you just said.
Well,
was
Sasha, are you
consciousness-
neutral? Sasha, are you neutral?
On what?
Are you a neutral person?
Well, there are so many questions. Am I neutral to Trump, for example? No, I'm not.
Sasha,
No,
you
it's
just
not.
really
No,
jumped
no,
away from this like it was
Am I
on fire.
neutral to Russia, who attacked and killing
What
thousands of
you're
people?
asking
No,
is
I'm not.
to end a society that doesn't need, if we don't need to end societies, what we need to do is end the fighting. And the way to do that is end the fears. And when you educate and end the fears, then we can do that. Japan was just a unique situation.
What about
Okay,
Germany?
worked with the Japanese for 5 years.
Actually,
Germany also a unique situation?
Right.
hold on, Sasha. Just to point this out.
Isn't
What-
Israel in bed with Iraq, or am I wrong about that? I
So-
was reading something about that. the
Well,
other
just to
day.
point it out, if we're
Kinda
going
scary.
down the solution path and looking at what happened in Germany, what happened in Japan, and different, do you realize how much their economies are? Do you think that could be a solution? Because right now in Gaza and even in the West Bank, it's some of the poorest areas across the globe. Because of the poverty, yes, there are issues there, but it also does have a very lucrative port that's right there that's being utilized. So in that solution that we're looking for, yes, everybody has their biases. And Sasha, you can just admit you are biased of this situation as well. You didn't have to jump out like somebody was calling you out. Oh, well, what do you mean? And Trump? No, we understand you called for genocide of the Palestinian people. So you have a bias.
First of all, I
do that.
don't call
So
for
hold on, Sasha. Let me
You
finish.
put
Let me finish.
words
We're going back
in
to
my mouth.
solutions.
Don't need that.
Going back to
Now
solutions.
I
Don't get
will
triggered.
I
Go
can
back to
talk
solutions.
over you just as
So
well.
let me
Okay,
finish.
you want
Let me
talk
finish.
over you?
Sasha.
Okay, I will have microphone just
Let
as
me
well. So
finish.
listen to
Let
me.
finish.
Okay,
No, I'm not-
okay.
let me
Nobody
finish.
needs your
Let me
stupidity
finish.
anymore.
Sasha, let me
Listen to
finish,
me.
please. I will let you talk. Let me finish. So,
Okay.
getting back to solutions, if we were to have companies begin to invest and utilize that port and continue to make that port more lucrative, allowing the people of Gaza and the West Bank to have more, because right now, a lot of the individuals in Gaza and in the West Bank go to Israel for jobs. So actually, if we invested, be it the U.S. and other companies themselves and other
How
countries,
much time do you need
adding-
still?
it doesn't
How much
matter,
time do
Sasha.
you need?
Sasha,
We
the more you
already
interrupt,
spent
the more you interrupt, the
25
longer I'm
minutes
gonna
on your
go. The more you
foolishness.
interrupt,
How
the
much
more
more
you
time do you
interrupt, the longer I'm gonna go.
No,
Sasha.
how
No,
much? Okay,
Sasha, let
you
me
know
finish.
what?
Let me finish.
Okay,
So
you-
again,
Sasha,
not
Sasha,
listening.
the
we
economic
understand
solution
you're
would be
angry. Who took him off?
He did.
He took himself off. But the coach, I was going to ask him, maybe Sasha will come back and everything, but there are, and it even comes back to what you were talking about, there are ideologues on both sides, because there are definitely
Mark, wait a
ideologues that
second.
are on both
One
sides.
question to all of you, okay? Have you seen pictures of the tunnels that Hamas built in Gaza? Have you seen that? It's a billions of dollars. It's sophisticated engineering structures built probably with help of Russians or Iran or I don't know, other actors. So it's combination
So,
of finances,
Sasha,
engineering, and all that. Have you seen it? Have you seen the pictures?
do you want us to answer, or are you going to yell over
I'm
top?
asking you, have you seen the pictures of
So,
these tunnels?
Just to point out,
Have you
we
seen it or
all
not?
know about the tunnel system.
I'm
We
asking,
all
have you
know
seen
about
these
the
tunnels
billions of dollars
or
that Hamas
not?
has done.
Okay, now
But
you can
again,
talk.
we're talking about
will not
solutions
stand
in a
your
way to improve that. So, Sasha, I know you're irate and I know you're upset. But again, we all know those factors about what Hamas has done underground. what we're talking about ways to help the actual people of Gaza and the people of West Bank and actually Israel live in a peaceful, harmonious way. Because honestly, the people of Israel don't all follow Netanyahu, and the people of Gaza and the people of West Bank don't all follow Hamas.
No.
So we've got to understand that the solution lies with the people and not actually focusing so much on, hey, Hamas is building all this. So, you know, the Palestinian people aren't down in those tunnels. The
Well, and
Palestinian
you know,
people
how
are-
many-
No, you're wrong, my friend.
So,
All these tunnels were built on top of hospitals and schools and
Yep, move down
universities.
there.
They
Hamas
were
is
built, so
down
Palestinians knew about these
Hamas
tunnels
is
and
down
Sasha,
helped build them. Hamas
Sasha,
itself couldn't
Hamas
build
is
these
down
tunnels. No,
Hamas
how do you
built
know?
those.
How do
They-
you know what's the proof?
Hamas
Show me
did
the
that.
proof. The Palestinians didn't participate in building the tunnels.
Sasha,
It's just Hamas
Sasha,
built. So whoever
just
is not
point out-
Hamas couldn't build these
Your
tunnels.
argument now, your
Listen,
argument now is
Listen,
that here's
listen.
your argument. You're
listen.
saying that we
This
cannot
Hamas
prove that
building
the Palestinian
story of
people
Japan
did
and
not
Germany.
participate,
No
but
other
you
way
can prove
they
that
have
they
to be
did.
brought to justice. If they're gonna fight,
Everybody's
they
saying
will be
Hamas
killed.
needs to be brought
If
to
they
justice.
want to give up, that's fine. So there will be international tribunal.
Everybody's on your side.
Without
about
that,
Hamas
there will be
being-
no peace and no reconstruction, no rebuilding, nothing. You have to admit what you've done on October 7th. You have to bring all
That's
hostages
Hamas.
back. You have to give up all the rulers of Hamas. They're being killed every day. A lot of the
There are
Hamas
20
rulers
some odd
in
Mark,
Lebanon.
Sasha, hold on, Sasha, hold on a
And
second.
that's
Really,
going to happen.
no, Sasha, really quickly and everything. One of the things I was curious about is our tunnels new? Because as I recall, the study of Germany and the study of World War II and World War I, there were a number of tunnels that were built by the Allies and the Axis forces. So I don't think that tunnels are necessarily a new form of warfare, including from some
Yeah.
terrorist organizations.
They're not.
I remember
Doesn't
that we built
matter
tunnels
what they build.
in Paris
Hey,
and
this is-
everything.
that's the comedy about build a wall. There are tunnels
Wait
up
a
on
sec,
the border.
You
Yeah,
are
right?
talking about, as you said
I say the
yourself,
same
the
thing.
most impoverished countries in the world.
Can we-
Hamas, the Gaza, and the West Bank.
Yeah, let's talk
yet
about walls.
they
right?
had billions
The
of
history
dollars
of walls. Where are
invested
they
in
now?
building these tunnels. They build the tunnels, period. Okay?
Hamas
Where's the
built
money? Where is
Hamas
the money
built
to
the
feed your people?
I'm not
You
worried
put
about the
all your money in the
You are
tunnels.
making- you
So
are
now
listening.
payback time, baby. Payback time, baby.
Sasha,
And then there will be rebuilding. There will be no Hamas. Then there will be rebuilding.
you
So
are
I
making
would
a
like to
nonsensical
suggest.
argument.
I
Yeah,
would
hold on
like
a
to
second.
suggest something here. In the compassion of all humanity, we didn't go in and say, let Germany commit genocide on anyone and everyone that was Israel or Jew. We didn't. And, you know, I constantly hear people, you know, especially Jewish, oh, you know, we're always taken advantage of. Everyone wants to kill us. And that's not true. We sacrificed hundreds of thousands of our own lives to go in and help the Jewish people and to stop that genocide that was on, you know, on the plate to be done. It was horrifying, but we sacrificed our lives, our people, and then we went in and we helped rebuild. And yes, we brought people in, but just like we, you know, we do in many cases, sometimes there's a lot of prejudice. Just like when my grandmother came over to this country during the World War, you know, she had to refrain from using her language. She had to be careful, and she had to bow her head down and just do her job. So, you know, there was a lot that goes on, and we can learn from history, and we can learn how to treat people. And one of the things I have learned is to eliminate the fear in their minds. And I think that there should be no genocide. I don't care what Sasha says or anyone else says. We didn't want to commit genocide. We didn't want to kill all the people in other countries when Iraq, you know, we have the ISIS issue. Finally, someone with intelligence said, you know, let's go target the terrorists, let's don't just destroy a whole country. And you've got to stop. And you know what, Sasha, I bet there are millions of tunnels in Israel, and there are millions of tunnels in other countries. And I want to get to the wall situation real quick, just as a joke, the light and the load here. You know, let's look at the history of all the walls that were built. Where are they today? They're on tour. You know, I've been to visit a couple of them. So it doesn't, you can build a wall to try to do something, but don't let it become the next tour group, you know, in 30 years, or people will tear down walls. Okay. And animals don't understand walls, and humans who didn't study your boundaries don't understand those boundaries either. And that's something that I'm trying to get across to a lot of our highly educated people in this country who say we need boundaries. Okay. But you know what? Just because you studied that there was a boundary here doesn't mean those people studied the same boundaries. Our schools are not the same schools. Our education is not the same education. And survival is exactly that. You're going to go where you can survive. You're going to go find the water when there's a drought. You're going to go find the food when there is no more food. That's what you do. And so when we have this situation that we're discussing with the Palestinians, they have been doing nothing but trying to survive all these years. Right now, we have an unfortunate situation. I think it just needs to take its course, let the war end. Do not commit genocide, because if you allow genocide, then you lose the faith of everyone else in this world. Everyone else, because no one will trust you. If you come in to say, let's try to heal the wounds here, and then you allow a genocide, who's going to trust you? I'm not going to trust you. I'm not going to trust Israel. I'm certainly not going to trust the U.S. if this happens. Okay. So what we need to do is reel in the attitude and the hurt, heal the wounds, just like David said, stop the bleeding, heal the wound.
Just another joke on the tunnel situation. You know, in Egypt, there are tunnels up under the pyramids. It's a brand new thing, I think.
And those pyramids go really deep. Oh my God, I'm surprised they don't get nosebleeds or sunburns from the inner earth, because those pyramids are deep.
Yeah, it's a brand new concept. The pharaohs have just introduced. But in terms of again,
even the Aztecs in Latin America have tunnels.
Yeah, they do.
Bravo.
So,
you got it.
But in terms of just exactly what you were just saying, Kim, in terms of genocide within itself, what makes, if your biggest complaint is that Hamas wants the genocide of the Israeli people, but what makes you different if you're calling for the genocide of the Palestinian people? What is the difference? You're still calling for a genocide of a people. We've got to get out of that. We've got to stop asking for more death. We've got to start building together. Even if there are tunnels you got to build together to create a train system, which Elon Musk is trying to do, that whole underground tunnel with the automated cars. But again, there's just so much that we can build together. And honestly, that area with Israel, Gaza, and the West Bank, having the ports right there and being a huge trade route, and make it, really drop in some businesses in there. Honestly, if there were, I hate to, I'm not really the biggest capitalist or whatever everything, but there are particular things where money actually is power. And honestly, if there's a lot of money in that situation, a lot of bombs are not dropping on these big time situations, because there's a lot of power that's going to deter that money from being destroyed. So honestly,
this is for both of you. What will we do? Because apparently there are estimates coming back to the UN and everything, because the UN aid office, and like I said, tomorrow we'll have some people that are doing relief efforts in not just that area of the world, but also in Ukraine and in other parts of Eastern Europe as well. And they'll be on our World Edition show. Mr. Parsons will be and everything. But there are estimates that there are at least 500,000 Palestinians in the enclave that won't have a home to return to when the war ends. So, and this is for everybody. What should we do with these vast amount of people that apparently don't have a home to go back to in the first place. So anybody have any suggestions? Are we going to replace them in other parts of the world? I think that was kind of the conversation that was going on between Netanyahu and some of the Arab nations, but they're saying, that's not necessarily to bring them to their borders, because that can even be a whole border conversation, but create a home for them. So what are we going to do with this vast amount of people? Because that's a lot of people.
We need to jump in. I mean, this is where the rebuilding of Gaza and the West Bank has to happen. And this is where the investment of companies, and I think, because one of the big things is just giving somebody a home with nothing else is still going to create animosity in that situation, because all you've done is killed all my brothers, my sisters, my mothers, my daughters, my sons, and you've given me this house where it's now empty, which before the home that I had used to be fruitful and fun, but now it's destroyed. So there has to be some type of, true humanitarian investment in that area where you rebuild. That's when, again, these companies, and again, I'm not huge for capitalism. I'm not huge, hey, we're going to, make money. No, but they're going to need jobs. There's got to be money coming through. There's got to be some type. Heck, Google could set up a spot there to actually provide internet, to start providing internet throughout that whole area, because that whole region needs it. Heck,
Amazon.
Truthfully, yes, because you could actually run a whole Amazon drone program for, honestly, everybody in the US, because now they've actually lifted that embargo. So now you can start delivering packages via drone. So now, hey, why not set up a whole factory there, paying actually a decent wage and a livable wage, not ripping people off. And, there are actually, I don't want to name, well, I can't, there's a company in China that actually basically has this whole slave labor set up, and people are committing suicide so much that they put out nets to catch people outside so they wouldn't commit suicide. Don't do that. Actually create a livable wage and actually employ these people, give them opportunities, help rebuild their homes, and do not go back into the same occupation style, because they have to have a land of their own. That's what the Palestinian people and the people of Gaza, that's a lot of the angst and agitation that's going on there right now. So truthfully, yes, rebuild in a sensible way, provide opportunity, turn it into a port that, make that port one of the biggest ports across the globe, because it could be. Just provide opportunity.
Well, here's a point to add to that. Busy hands, idle hands make trouble, right? So busy hands, giving them a purpose, giving them things to do and a task and a routine is going to end the fights and the fear and the war. When you give them a means to sustain themselves and stop having to survive and live in fear, that becomes a global unity right there. That becomes something very good. And then it can serve other countries. It can serve its connected, we're not going to say brother or sister, but connected nations, right? Because we're connected to countries that we don't get along with. So, but it's going to serve the connected countries, because then everybody's in a little bit better attitude. And are you still going to have some people with sore wounds and want revenge? Yes, you are. You know what? Just like the Native American Indians carried a lot of sore wounds and wanted revenge for years. But over time, and as the next generations roll in, that kind of eases off. And, eventually things just rebuild. And all of that justice and revenge kind of dies away. But many times we all want that. But one of the things I have learned, instead of going out and seeking the negative justice and fighting and putting people down and trying to make their lives miserable, I have learned by rebuilding and building and becoming positive and building something that generates something that gives to other people, and it just keeps growing, that was my justice and revenge on people who have done me wrong over the years.
Speaking of rebuild,
so that's what I would, and I get it, Sasha, because, when you have people and love that were killed in a terrorist attack, which I did in 9/11. And I was actually on a plane in 9/11 that morning. So, what you're saying, yeah, your first impulse is to do, but truly the true thing to do, you cannot kill a deer by blowing up the forest. Okay. You target the fox and you target the deer. Okay. But you don't go blow up the whole forest, because then you're going to blow up things need and things that the world needs. So they need to start targeting, use their intelligence. They claim to be the most intelligent army in the world, or military, and they need to use it and prove it. And they need to start targeting, because when we started doing that, that's when we healed, and that's when we became a better nation. But when we were out there, and you guys can agree with me on this, when we were out there just blowing up everything and anything, we weren't healing. And we weren't setting a good example, right?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but Kim, speaking of healing, and we're going to switch the topic just slightly and everything along those lines. But there has been a number of issues, and we had these lovely ideas of government funding, and apparently the Senate Republicans want to once again extend the current government funding levels, likely into March. And I know that we've had these conversations even with the Honorable David Walker and everything, but apparently we might be heading toward another shutdown, and so they are wanting to extend the current government funding in order to buy more time to avoid a shutdown and negotiate a spending bill. So it marked the third time Congress has pushed its own deadline to fund the government.
I think it's time to fire them. I think we need to go in and fire them.
We are in.
Fire elected people.
We are in an election year. The Republican Party, well, in the House mainly, has already, there are some members that have already come out and said, for example, dealing with the immigration system and the money for, to help our immigration system, they've said that they don't want to fund that because that's going to give Joe Biden a win. That is where we are in our politics. We do not. Donald Trump came out on an interview and stated he hopes the economy fails under Joe Biden this year because he doesn't want to come in like Herbert Hoover. So we will, until we get past this partisan politics stuff, especially on the Republican side, we are going to struggle financially, especially this year when we're just coming off a year when we beat every single expectation for 2020, every projection we were off the charts on. We are coming in with a strong economy into 2024, and they are trying to kill it because it's a talking point that they cannot use.
Right. So, well, and I'm going to point out something here. I'm still trying to understand it. It was something that was brought to my attention about a week ago. Mark and I were talking about it. But, when you're talking about firing elected individuals, I want to see what Peru's been doing because, in the last 5 years, I think they've had 8 presidents. Generally, their presidents are supposed to take a 5-year term. And they haven't been able to, even one president lasted a couple of days. So I don't know what's causing their turnaround of presidents, if they're being fired and, new ones are being put in. And how do they run those elections so quick, right? Okay, everybody. Yeah, that president only lasted 5 days. So we got to do the election all over again. And who's firing them? I want to know who gets to fire the president of Peru, right?
Well, I mean, in certain countries, there are military takeovers, and I'm not sure whether Peru is one, but they definitely will have the military takeover and all along those lines. I don't know, because I was going to get to it in the World Edition, but we didn't really get a chance to get into it. But one of the complaints that people have about the United States is we've got 2 older guys that are running for president, one that is well into his 80s, and some people wonder whether he is sharp as a tack or not sharp as a tack, and the other one is only 3 years or 4 years younger and everything. So that looks like that's going to be who will be running the country. And before folks joined World Edition, one of the things that I was mentioning too, Nick, is that France elected as their prime minister a very young gentleman. I think he's 34, and he's openly gay. So where is the young leadership in our community? And do we need more young leaders to be running these countries?
That's a double whammy for growth in this next generation. And that's also to prove that, France is thousands of years ahead of the United States. My husband used to tell me all the time, Kim, calm down. The US is still a baby compared to the rest of the world. We still have a lot of growing to do and a lot to learn and understand. I don't understand why we can't learn from other people, but I think good for France, right? And when you say, is he sharp as a tack? I'd rather say, is he a nail or a nail in the coffin? But I'm sick and tired, and this is what I say all the time, and I want to get this out there so that it becomes, some kind of tagline or chant. I'm tired of the White House being a retirement home. We need to get some younger people. I'm old, okay, but I feel like I could take on the world at my age, but I know it's not the smart thing to do. We need young minds. We need healthy minds, and we need smart minds. And we need somebody who can do math and somebody who's financially literate and can do math, because apparently these guys cannot do math, none of them. And if they are asking for money to shut down, then here's the rules. We need to redo the rules for shutdown. Not one of them gets back pay. Not one of them gets paid until they get their butts back in office. If they can't behave better than this, they don't deserve pay. We need to set new rules to make them work. The problem is they don't work. None of them. None of Congress really gets off their butt and work. I can go shadow them and still outrun them at night and do a marathon the next day. That's how, I'm just saying, they don't work. They fight, they spread fear and point blame, but none of them really work. It's really pathetic. Our country allows this, and term limits. I agree. We need to set better term limits.
Yep. I don't know if anybody else got any thoughts on that.
Yeah,
but one thing I also go ahead.
I was just going to say, there's a lot of problems. The retirement home, I agree with. We need younger, we need people in there who understand our society of today, because, we have individuals who in Congress, even, that are older than Joe Biden, and people are still voting for them as well. So it's just, we have to understand that we need fresh eyes that understand our society and where we are, and not just always, let's go back to make America great again. Look, dude,
let's go back.
50 years ago, MLK Jr. Day wasn't a holiday. Mark and I probably couldn't be on this show. Couldn't date. Interracial marriage was illegal at that time. Nixon was in the White House pushing the Southern strategy. Taxes were actually even higher, and we actually had more things that we could offer. But the idea was, hey, look, let's go ahead and take that stuff away, because we're going to make the corporations a little bit more rich, because they're going to pay us. We can advocate for the rich, because the rich are going to donate to our party and what we want to do. So they're thinking about the future is what we need more so. We need minds that are relevant in understanding what's going on with AI and how AI is going to change the landscape a lot, and how not only with AI, robotics, quantum computing, the race to space, how legitimately the race to, matter of fact, today it was pointed out that the rocket ship that was going to Mars right now, that was going to bury some individuals from NASA on the moon, it's lost. It's now gone. It's going to be lost in space. It's not, well, I'm sorry, not from NASA that they were burying. It was people that wrote, I think it was Star Trek, I think it was. But yeah, that's going to be lost in space now. We got to focus on our technology. India put a rover on the moon that at the cheapest cost ever. Why can't we jump in and find out how India did it and work together to do that, and understand that our society is no longer locked between the Pacific, the Atlantic. No, our society needs to understand that there's a whole world out there. Us trying to isolate each other to, hey, well, we're just here. No, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. Individuals coming through for immigration, we have to understand that it's not an invasion. Stop using terminology to demonize people. Understand that these individuals are coming to work and coming to help. And immigrants have provided so much to our society economically, culturally, and everything. And honestly, Steve, Fareed did a beautiful piece on immigration this past Sunday. I don't know if you saw it. Beautiful. That is something that we should be advocating for is, yes, let's fix our immigration system so these individuals can come and help our society and grow, because these people just want to be your neighbor. They have the lowest crime rate compared to native-born U.S. citizens. So instead of demonizing people, let's try and, hey,
build them.
How can we work together? Oh, just like I tried to point out about Shaq yesterday. Hey, you live in Australia here and there. Hey, teach me something about.
Like you said, we might argue, but I listened to you. But you've said something that really concerns me. We could put men on the moon without blowing up spaceships. Back in the 60s, right? And today we can't even put ashes to the moon without losing it. There's a problem with our technology, and our problem is we cut corners. Our problem is we continuously hire contractors who have had nothing but contract after contract, and rely on that contract just based on who they know and not what they do and what they provide. But I have a problem with this continued space stuff because we've left so much trash up there, and we need to learn to clean up after ourselves. But before I continue on and everything, but Steve is here. Welcome, Steve. What do you have good to say for us today?
Yeah, I'm sorry I was late. I was caught
okay.
I was caught in the storm, and I didn't want to be on my phone. I could barely see. I had a city.
Yeah, it's very dangerous.
Yeah,
very
canceled the meeting, so I couldn't open up the show.
I'm waiting for the Wizard of Oz house to land. It's so dangerous here.
Yeah, it's really crazy. Well, real quickly, I'll end with this. I mean, I do think Joey brought up a good point about immigration. I'm going to be talking about that next week. And I think what you're seeing, I think it's a good way to end the show today, World Politics. And Sasha, it's great to see you. I think you're seeing a return to a very isolationist foreign policy around the world. Kind of the international rules-based system we had where you respect the sovereignty of other nations is going to nil with, the invasion of Ukraine and, war in Israel and, there's talk of, China and Taiwan. This whole notion of immigration. I mean, you think of the 1920s, they passed so many laws in America to eliminate immigration, and it became a predominantly white society. And not until the 1965 Immigration Act did immigrants, many from China and India and Asia, came in, and America did a lot better, and many immigrants. And so, but this is happening not only in the United States, all around the world, where immigration is viewed as a bad thing. And so I think it'll be interesting to see now, does that isolationism fuel nationalism, where you have more dictators? Yeah, I think it does. And I think that's really, the world is a much more dangerous, unstable place than it was. And perhaps what we need is issues that we can unite around. One is the environment, climate change. Jacoby brought up a good one: AI, technology, innovation, the jobs of the future. These are things that all of us can agree on. And I love that quote when John F. Kennedy, I'll end with this. Kennedy said, ask not what your country can do for you, what you can do for your country. Ask not what America can do for you, but what we together can do for the freedom of man. Right. And think about that. That was a president in 1960. And that's a great message to say, what can we do with other leaders around the world for the freedom of man, for the freedom of humanity? Right now, it's just every nation vying for its own. And I didn't let
it's interesting you bring that up, Steve, and everything, because actually we have and I'm just going to borrow his quote because I love this quote. I love the word that he came up with. I think he made up the word and everything, but it's a very interesting because we have a engineer that is helping us and all along those lines. But he brought up a very interesting point in the chat and everything, because he said the whataboutism, that's the word that I'm not sure is an actual word and everything, is about both sides on both sides is a negative feedback loop spiraling into future conflicts. The only way forward is to first admit that in war, all sides commit atrocities, and to be a young man, because I think that if I remember correctly, Kim, he's a recent graduate, so he's fairly young and everything, that is some great wisdom that he brought in and all along those lines, because it is something that is very real that this young man that is probably in his 20s brought up as well.
Okay,
Yes,
Mark,
he's
I would
very
like to notice
intelligent.
about these comments. Let me say something.
Tell me up.
It appears to me that in Second World War, both sides committed atrocities. Americans and Allied forces
Yeah.
versus Japanese and German forces. So atrocities were on both sides. So how we could resolve this situation? Was there a kind of a third body, United Nations, or some kind of a semi-god who said, okay, guys, stop fighting. Okay, let's have a peace. Let's rebuild. Let's do some wonderful thing. No, there has to be first capitulation. There has to be a loser side. It can be completely dismantled and become submissive and become peaceful and say we want peace. We recognize right for certain country like Israel or some others to exist. And from that foundation, you can start a rebuilding process. If that foundation is not going to be laid, it's nothing. Now, on another topic, I would like to ask you about immigration. Look, I've traveled a lot in my life. I've been in several countries, primarily Europe, some other countries as well, like Thailand and Hong Kong and many, many other countries, but primarily Europe. And I want to tell you something like Europe, which United States always trying to compare themselves to Europe. Look, Europe is so much more advanced, so much prosperous, so much comfortable. However, that was all before a year 2000 or so. Now, when all this African and Asian immigration started to take over Europe, and I was the last time I was in Europe, I didn't enjoy it at all. On the streets of Rome, you could not be safe. There were a lot of people of some kind, which I'm not going to tell you what kind. Take a guess. They would like to rob you. They would like to snatch your purses, or so on. And that's never happened in Italy when I remember it in the 70s and 80s and 90s and even the beginning of 2000. But once that immigration process started, now you want to see, okay, take it today, Toronto. You cannot go to downtown Toronto because all filled with all these Palestinians or some kind of demonstrations. And guess what? Police is giving them coffee and donuts and so on. So a lot of people just stopped going to downtown Toronto. There's nothing to do. It's becoming a dangerous place. You want to see United States cities will become the same as now Toronto and European city. God forbid.
Jacob, you got any thoughts around that? Because I have a lot of thoughts, but I'm not going to go into it. I've let you take
That was a full-blown rant on hatred of
Stop
anybody that
it.
isn't
Stop
like
it.
you.
Stop it. Stop
That's
it.
all that
You
was.
better learn what I'm
Just
talking.
pointing out.
Learn, take a pencil and write
Just
it
pointing
down.
out.
Okay?
Sasha, so here's a question, Sasha. So you're not native-born Canadian? You're
No,
actually an immigrant as well?
Yes, I
So
am.
please, instead of saying that immigrants from, from a particular place, you're an immigrant as
Absolutely
well.
right.
You
Yes.
provide
Yes, my
something
friend.
to you
Absolutely
provide something
right.
to that country just as much
Absolutely
as
right.
others
I
do.
don't need
So
to be politically correct.
Yeah, I
Okay,
know.
I'm
I get that.
self-sustaining and I can
get that.
say and
But
do
again,
anything what I want.
Sasha,
It's in my power.
why are you trying to talk over me right now when I'm just trying to make a quick point?
Okay.
So in terms
Okay,
of
5
immigration,
minutes. Okay, do it.
okay, cool. Just to point out with immigration again, those immigrants have brought so much to our society economically,
Nothing they brought.
culturally.
The
What?
society was a prosperous and
Sasha, are you again,
in
Sasha?
a world without
Sasha,
any
Sasha,
immigration.
Sasha,
Okay.
I allowed you to talk. I allowed you to talk without interruption.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Can you please
Thank
do the
you.
same? Sasha, can you please do the same?
Okay.
So,
Do it
thank you.
faster. Please faster.
So again, we have to be honest about
Yeah.
the what immigrants have brought to our society, and they brought a lot in terms of not
See you on
only.
Tuesday, guys.
Okay.
Oh,
Have a great night. See you on Tuesday. I'll open up. Thank you.
see you
Take
Tuesday.
care. Thank you for
Yeah.
your nice
Oh.
words. We need to
Appreciate
wrap.
Yeah.
Thank
Go ahead,
you.
Jacoby. Finish what you were
Thank you.
saying.
Thank you. Wrap
On,
it,
on a
please.
happy on a happy note on the immigration side, one thing that Steve said when he was talking about learning from each other, which is the thing, learning cultures and bringing everybody together and providing things for each other and working together as one and being able to improve our society. That's immigration. That is what the immigrant population brings to our society. And to touch on that on a happy note, in many cartoons that are out there, even Japanese animated cartoons, one that I actually just watched last night because I'm a big nerd, Moonlight Fantasy, it had their groups of individuals segregated off into their groups of into their sections of where they came from, but they weren't improving, and they had a big discussion about why can't they improve. Their idea was to work together to immigrate.
Wonderful.
And what they did is they actually increased their abilities based on working together with individuals that they had never worked before. That is what immigration is, and that's how we should view it, rather than, hey, let me be Sasha and say that the only reason immigrants come is to rob people, which is racist and hateful.
And
Because I know Sasha probably
use-
did that when he
Yeah,
moved.
I think so too.
So I'm just kidding. So hear me out on this before we got to wrap. In defense of what Sasha said about, there had to be somebody who won the war to end the war back in the past, because they had no means to communicate the way we do today. Today, we can actually communicate via any means, and we can talk until we're bored to death, or maybe kill each other talking. But the thing is that we have a means to communicate that we did not have back then. In fact, all we have were pigeons and, messages put on pigeons. And actually that's how they're sending messages today, because drones are being shot down. So, so pigeons are a better source of delivery. Believe it or not, this is really happening. So hear me out on this. We don't have to have a winner of a war today to declare some kind of peace, because we have way too many means of saying that there's peace. And that's the alarm going off that we have to say goodnight. Everyone, thank you very much for joining us and listening to all of us argue. And if you've got some arguments or points of views, please post them. We'd love to hear them. Have a great and wonderful Tuesday night, and we'll see you Thursday where we pick up on this.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Bye-bye, everybody.
All right.
Mark,
Hold on.
send me.
I will.
Thanks.